Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to look at the cam belt, the removing and the replacing of the cam belt on the 8-valve Golf Mark 1 motor. Okay, first and foremost you need to get things out of the way. First of all, your gearbox, and then you need to remove this cover by removing these two 10mm nuts over here, and not forgetting the screw here, this round screw here, which loosens with a 6mm Allen key. And then that cover just slips off quite simply. And next you've got to ensure that you align all your timing marks before you take off your belt. The idea is to hand turn the crank until you line up the mark on the cam sprocket in line with your lip of the tappet cover. And the same you will do with your crank pulley. You will see there's a mark where I'm pointing to with the screwdriver, and it has a corresponding mark on the plastic cover which sits about there. You can't really see it, but you can see it easily with the naked eye. Line that up, and then you will also come to your flywheel, and you will see there's a mark which is a sort of like diamond cutout, and there is a corresponding mark on the top. That also needs to be lined up. One last thing that you can do on the timing to ensure that it's in 100%, you come to your number 1 plug and you insert a screwdriver down here, and you can feel this piston is right to the top. That is how you know the timing is 100% in. And if you shine a light down there, you can actually see the piston to the top. A bit difficult to see here, but that's just to make 100% sure. And then you will come to your distributor, take it off, take off your rotor, and you will see the shaft here, distributor shaft, which has a gap in it. Now you can see the gap needs to point to that mark over there where I'm pointing the screwdriver now. Then make sure that those two lines mark up. And this is how it will look with the rotor back on. And this is basically pointing to your number 1 plug, and that is the correct mark to be set on. Now you will notice that this distributor is actually standing skew. It's supposed to be standing straight. This portion normally is here. Now I'll explain to you why that happens. That is because your intermediate shaft pulley, which is situated here, which we will see later on, is not lined up on the mark in line with the crank pulley, and that is why this is sort of like off center. But it won't make your timing to go out, it just basically doesn't look right. So I'm going to show you how to get this straight. And now that you've done all those checks, timing marks all 100% in, now you can proceed to remove this plastic cover and also the crank pulley and the water pump pulley. Now when I say remove the pulley, you're not going to remove it by undoing this 19mm bolt here. You're only going to need to loosen the Allen key nuts. Same applies to the water pump. You're only going to remove the Allen key nuts, and then it will come out. And once your pulleys are off, that will enable you to get off the plastic cover to get to the cam belt. Okay, so once you have cracked open these Allen key bolts, the 4 on the crank and the 3 on the water pump, you can then proceed to remove the fan belt from the water pump. And all that is required here is just to loosen this with a 13mm spanner, and it will undo, will release the tension, and then you push down. Just push down, and then that will enable you to remove the belt. So there you go, belt loose, fan belt off. And there, with all those Allen key bolts out, the pulley just slips out, and you don't have to worry, it only goes on one way, so you can't make a mistake by putting it back. Same thing with the water pump pulley. Take out the 3 bolts, Allen key bolts, and it just slips out. So there you go, both pulleys out. And now we need to proceed to remove the plastic cover. So the plastic cover is held together by 2 5mm Allen key bolts, one here and the other one over there. And on top you will also find another 10mm nut, which you'll have to undo from a bolt that runs through from the water pump side. There you go, that's your cover loosened up. And now one more check before you take off your belt. Piston number 1 is right to the top, which means it's on top dead center, and the flywheel mark is aligned. Shaft and rotor is pointing to the mark on the distributor, which means it's firing on 1, plug number 1. And now you can take off your belt. Right now, to remove the belt, we're going to have to loosen up the tensioner, and that will release the tension of the belt. So you need a 13mm spanner to loosen up there. And with the tensioner now all loosened up, you can just remove the belt. There you go, belt off. And with the new belt off, you may want to check if your belt matches the old belt, just to make doubly sure you got the right part. And of course the correct size, make 100% sure. Now there's one thing that we got to do before we put on that new belt. Remember I spoke to you about this distributor that is laying sort of on a slant because the intermediate pulley shaft has not been lined up. So I want to take you there to show you which pulley I'm referring to. It would be this one here. This one obviously has to be lined up with the crankshaft pulley. Now you can see what I've done is after I've lined up that pulley, the intermediate shaft pulley, the shaft, I've put it on the correct mark, and now you can see the shaft has moved away from this mark over there. So now what it means is you need to loosen up your distributor bolt here at the bottom, and then we need to move that in line with this mark at the back here. Okay, so let's loosen that bolt, 13mm, and then when it's loose we will move the distributor. So after I've loosened that bolt, now I come to the distributor itself and I move the notch so that it moves in such a way that it's in line with that mark again. Can you see how it moves? And at the same time, now your distributor is straight. It's not sitting over there. Straight. There you can see. And to do that, you need to put on your crank pulley back on again. You don't have to bolt it up. And when you come to the intermediate pulley, all you need to do is line up a mark that is on here, which I can't really show you. It's a bit difficult to see, but there's a mark there, and I lined it up with this white mark here on the crank. So basically that straightened out your distributor, as you can see, as I showed you. Once you're done, don't forget to tighten down the distributor bolt again. And now comes the fun part, putting the new belt on. So I've already put it on around the crank, the bottom, and I've got it around the intermediate, and from there onwards you need to pick up the slack and work it up to the cam. And now your belt is on, and now you need to tension the belt accordingly. And as you can see the tensioner here, you just need to get yourself a sharp pointed object, poke it in this hole here, press it towards you and tighten the 13mm nut. And then the belt shouldn't be too tight and not too loose. You just need to be able to flick it around with your thumb and forefinger like that. And once you've done, you can go back to your crank and give it 2 turns, give the engine 2 nice full turns just to feel if there's any interference, and you can also check on your timing marks if they are all still aligned.